Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Luke. I've been piercing for about 5 years now, and I think I just want to go over a basic piercing aftercare. Proper piercing aftercare is still very new in the grand scheme of how long people have been stabbing themselves in the face to look cool. 20 years ago, people were told to put alcohol in their piercings and to twist them. This is now seen as more brutal and abusive and frowned upon. It causes many more complications if you do it that way. I say that to point out the fact that the aftercare regimen and healing guide may later change for most professionals, and I'll be sure to change with it when better and newer research comes out. I do think it's important to understand why we're doing what we're doing. This is a more in-depth dive into that. First, let's talk about what's happening when you get a piercing. What happens is you have a puncture wound. This means that you had a foreign object go all the way through your skin. Now you don't have like any defensive tissue to kind of like fight against that. So what you do is your body creates something called a fistula. Basically, it's just like a long flesh straw. Your body's going to go through 3 different stages of healing. That is building the fistula. Okay, so when we say healing, it's referring to it building that. I'm just going to kind of break it down into the 3 main stages. First stage is the inflammatory phase. The piercing is brand new, you're bleeding and it's swelling and it's tender. Your body will start to try to achieve something called homeostasis, which is where it just kind of makes it stop bleeding. It does this by having blood clots, platelets, and plasma going to the site that it got pierced at. It begins to lay down the foundation of the epidermis, basal cells. Now you might be saying, well, when you pierced me, it didn't bleed, so I'm good, right? Wrong. You're going to go through this phase irregardless. Sometimes you may bleed and sometimes you may not. A lot of times bleeding is dependent on health factors, medicine intake, piercing techniques, things like that. So for the next couple days, some pain is normal, some bleeding, typical on and off, it's pretty normal. Some bruising is normal. It's not typical, but it's normal. Heavy blood flow for continuous bleeding would constitute talking to a professional. Heavy blood flow or continuous bleeding for more than a few days may be cause for concern, and you should contact your piercer or physician if that happens. If we have a piercing that is like bleeding freely, we kind of have gone over it a little bit more in depth in person. Every now and then you'll have a piercing that starts to swell so quickly and abruptly that we need to switch it out for like a longer bar. Sometimes we just have to switch it out in the shop. We just do it with a taper to kind of avoid those things. It's also part of the reason why we don't use hoops whenever we are doing initial piercings for most piercing. After your piercing, you may also see some inflammatory serous exudate, which is a red and white blood cell protein and other components to fill the wound, help with clotting and prevent infection, and to really just begin the repairing process on the inside. It's important to remember that pus is secreted in response to inflammation or infection, okay? It isn't unheard of to have a little bit of pus with the initial inflammatory phase, like when you first get stabbed, but after the first couple days, it really shouldn't be that. That should be something that cuts off after that. The second stage is called the proliferative phase, or as I will call it when you see me, the growing phase. This may take several weeks for most wounds. However, piercings are different. This is because the fistula is being formed. In most wounds, the object that caused the initial injury has been removed. That is true with piercings, but you have to also substitute a needle for a piece of jewelry. This causes this process to take much longer because it is healing around something present in the wound. This causes healing times to increase drastically. Your body will start the process of granulation, where your body produces cells such as collagen proteins to help strengthen and heal the wound and start contraction. This is typically when the edges of the wound will try to pull together to seal the opening. However, the jewelry is there to stop this process. This is when you will start to see the crusties. Crusties, the non-medical term, is used to describe the discharge around the healing wound. Do not pick at these. If anything, use sterile saline on it and pat it with a paper towel. If it falls off, great. If not, leave it be, it's still working. This is also when the new skin cells, epithelials, begin to grow along the edges of the wound and grow inward, building the base layer. In a process called
epithelialization.
Yeah, these cells grow together and thicken. Finally, they line the wound completely, merging from each end to create a new delicate seal channel. It can still be damaged or torn quite easily. By the end of this stage, the piercing is no longer considered an open wound and initial healing is considered complete. This is typically when I recommend downsizing your piercing. Right at the end of this stage is when I find it most appropriate. The third and final stage is the maturing or the remodeling stage. During this stage, the collagen proteins become more organized in order to stabilize and strengthen the fistula. This is essentially the scar tissue that keeps you protected from microorganisms. Your body is just making sure that it's okay. This causes the second and third stages of healing to continue to repeat each other kind of over and over. Elaine Angel in the Piercing Bible said it best. I don't have an excerpt, so this is just Google reading it off. Pretend it's her.
For a piercing, it takes months to years for the cells that have lined the interior of the channel, essentially scar tissue, to strengthen and stabilize after the fistula has formed from end to end.
Remember, when one or more of these cycles are disrupted, it causes everything else to kind of get thrown off. This is why piercing healing times are very complicated. Keeping the foreign object inside the body while healing around it is difficult, and why jewelry materials are really important. It's natural to have times where your piercing may become irritated or become tender or secrete after a few months of it being totally fine. If you haven't had any other problems with it, then it's usually totally fine. Just kind of go back to your normal sort of routine. There are no standard healing times for any piercing, okay? Just estimates. Honestly, there isn't a foolproof. Okay, cool. Okay, foolproof. There isn't a foolproof way of making sure that your piercing is fully healed or still healing. If you've had it for a long time, both openings look smooth, not raw or jagged, no tenderness, no discoloration, no crusting. Typically that means you're okay. Another thing to kind of look out for is called sebum. It's a stinky yellow cheese-like oil that will sometimes collect in the channel of your healed piercing. Typically, if you can see that, that means it's okay. Whenever we're kind of reopening them, you'll see it come out a lot. Remember, a new piercing is always going to be more delicate than a seasoned one, so be careful. And remember, even if a piercing has made it all the way through initial healing, you can always regress and lose it if you start mistreating or abusing it.